So, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about love and romance and marriage. And we started back at the beginning talking about the love song that you are writing. Whether you are in the dating phase or whether you've been married for years, what love song are you writing? Because you set the tone and the tempo of your own love song. And so you can have a vibrant, exciting love song, or you can have a song that has lost that love and feeling. And then we talked about the importance of continuing to date, whether you're in that dating phase and getting to know that person, or even 50 years down the line, the importance of continuing to date that person that you're with. And then last week, we talked about sex. We talked about intimacy and the importance of that in the early stages of marriage, but also later on in marriage. And today we're going to talk about something that exists in every single relationship. Whether you're just dating, whether you're newlyweds, whether you've been married forever, every single relationship has conflict. And the reason that we have conflict is because each of us comes into this relationship and we have expectations. I'm going to be like this, and I'm going to do that, and they're going to be like this, and they're going to do these things. And the problem comes when our expectations collide with reality, and they don't match up. And so we begin to have to wrestle with all of this. And my challenge to those who are in the very early stages of a relationship, those who are still courting, those who are still dating, my challenge to you would be, date someone long enough to have conflict. Not only to have conflict, but to resolve that conflict. Because in that dating phase, you're getting to know that person, and one of the most important things you can learn is how they handle conflict. Because there are so many marriages these days that fall apart, that dissolve, and the reason listed is irreconcilable differences. The reality is, we serve a God whose mission is reconciliation. When we were his enemies, he came for us. He made a way for us to come to him, to be reconciled to him, and he has given us that very same mission of reconciliation. And so, no Christian marriage should ever dissolve due to irreconcilable differences, because it is our purpose to find resolution, to reconcile with one another. Now, we've been looking through the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs, and we said that this book kind of contains 4 different relationship phases. And in chapters 1 and 2, we look at the attraction or the courtship phase. In chapters 3 and 4, that's the wedding night. That's the intimacy and the commitment. Last week, we covered chapter 7. That's romance and that's faithfulness till the end. And today, we're going to be covering chapters 5 and 6, which is about conflict and conflict resolution. It's really interesting that out of the 8 chapters in this book, 25% of all the content in this book is dedicated to conflict and conflict resolution. Now, when we think of relationships, we often think of attraction, and we think of romance, we think of commitment and faithfulness, and those are all good things, but just as important is our ability to resolve conflicts. And as we begin in Song of Songs, chapter 5, we begin to see this conflict arise as this woman begins to speak. She says, "I was sleeping, but my heart was awake. A sound, my love is knocking. Open for me, my sister, my dearest, my dove, my perfect one. My head is soaked with dew, my hair with the night mists. I have taken off my tunic. Why should I put it on again? I have bathed my feet. Why should I get them dirty?" Now, it can be kind of hard to understand what's going on here, so let me paint you a picture. They've been married at this point for a while. We don't know exactly how long, but they've been living life together. And They've gotten into their routine. They have their roles that they play. And every day he goes off to work and he does his work to provide for the family. And she is tasked with caring for the home. That's how their relationship works. And so the evening comes and she prepares the meal and she waits expectant for him and he doesn't show up. He doesn't call. I mean, this is before phones. This is before instant messaging or anything like that. But he doesn't send a messenger. He doesn't let her know that he's not going to be home for dinner, that he's going to be late. And so she begins to worry. What's going on? Why hasn't he come back? And eventually that worry leads to anger. As he continues to not come back, she gets ready for bed. She goes to bed. She lays down and she's asleep. But her mind is still racing. Her heart is still awake. And then in the early hours of the morning, he comes back. The dew is on the ground. It's that late, and it covers his head, and he comes and he lays it on thick. My dearest, my dove, my perfect one, open the door because somebody locked it. And we see here, he was at fault, but he comes with a peace offering, and we see in turn her selfishness. I've taken off my tunic. I've already gotten in bed. Why should I get dressed for you? Why should I dirty my feet to come unlock the door for you when you didn't have the common courtesy to send a messenger and let me know that you were going to be late? See, this selfishness, it is the heart of the majority of any conflict that any couple ever faces. And if you want to resolve conflict, the very first thing you need to do is defeat selfishness. You need to put aside yourself, because the reality is, I've discovered this over and over throughout the years. People who are hurting hurt other people. We see it with wild animals. You find an animal that is injured and you want to help it and you go to try and help it, but it bites, it scratches, it claws, whatever. It lashes out. It's hurting, and so it tries to hurt you in turn. And that's our natural reaction. When somebody hurts us, whether it's intentional or not, when we are hurting, our natural reaction is to lash out and to hurt other people. But I would challenge you to look beyond that hurt. As they lash out to you, as they try to hurt you in turn, look beyond that hurt. Look to the facts. Look at the feelings that are behind it. Look at the story that is being told. I've done an entire sermon series on just conflict resolution within a marriage. It's on our website if you want to go check that out. It's like 4 whole sermons just dedicated to resolving conflict within a marriage. And in that sermon series, we focused on Philippians chapter 2, where it said, "Don't do anything for selfish purposes, but with humility, think of others as better than yourselves. Instead of each person watching out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others." Because as I said, God is in the business of reconciliation. God has given you the mission of reconciling with other people. And if you are looking out for yourself first, you can't look out for them first. So you need to defeat your own selfishness. You need to put your own selfishness aside and put the other person's desires and their needs ahead of your own. Let's continue on with verse 4. It says, "My love put his hand in through the latch hole, and my body ached for him. I rose, I went to open for my love, and my hands dripped myrrh, my fingers liquid myrrh over the handles of the lock." Notice that even though she attacked him, he was in the wrong, and then she lashed out in her selfishness to hurt him, but he didn't attack back. He didn't even defend himself and say, well, I'm justified. I'm providing for this family. No. He reached in through the door and put liquid myrrh, a peace offering, an apology. If you're going to resolve conflict, not only do you need to set aside your own selfishness, but you need to actively avoid retaliation. Because what we normally do is we go tit for tat. They did this, and so I'm going to do that. They hurt me, so I'm going to hurt them. I said when there's conflict, we tend to go to silence or violence. We either implode or we explode. We throw it all out there and we lash out verbally or physically and try to hurt that person, or we take it all inside and we shut down and we start to attack them in other ways. We start to make little jabs. We become passive aggressive, and they make a comment and we jump on that with a snide comment back. And we think that's the only way. They're never going to learn. If I don't do this, if I don't hurt them back, then they will never learn and the problem will never get resolved. But the reality is there is another option. When he was insulted, he did not reply with insults. When he suffered, he did not threaten revenge. Instead, he trusted himself to the one who judges justly. If you want to resolve conflict within your relationship, you're going to have to actively pursue peace. That's what this man did. He reached through the door. He didn't play any games. He didn't go back and forth with her, but he offered his peace offering. He apologized. And what came of that? She says, I went and opened for my love, but my love had turned, gone away. I nearly died when he turned away. I looked for him but couldn't find him. I called out to him, but he didn't answer me. They found me. The guards who made their rounds in the city, they struck me, bruised me. They took my shawl away from me, those guards of the city walls. I place you under oath, daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my love, what should you tell him? That I'm weak with love. Eventually, she came around. He didn't retaliate. He didn't attack back. He didn't try to defend himself. He apologized for what he had done wrong, and she came around. And she came looking for him. It took her a while, and so he had gone back to work or wherever he was, but she began to pursue him. And what we see here is reminiscent of something that was back in chapter 3. Back before their wedding, she had this dream where she was concerned that her husband wasn't going to show up, that his love wasn't real, and she went out into the streets looking for him. And she encountered the city guards, and they helped her in her innocence to find and direct her back to her love. But here, she gets a different reaction. Because she's not the same person, that innocent bride that she was back then. She has indulged herself in selfishness. And these men, they react in kind, saying, you're not the same woman. And they take her shawl, stripping her of her innocence, and she calls out to the daughters of Jerusalem, telling them, I am so sick with love. Help me. Help me find the one that I love. And their response in verse 9 is interesting. To summarize it, they basically say, why? Why should we help you? You have been a jerk to him. What's so great about him? Why are you now looking for him, but you didn't care about it before? And this elicits in her a very healthy reaction. In verse 10, my lover is radiant and ruddy. He stands out among 10,000. His head is fine as gold. His wavy hair black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by channels of water. They are bathing in milk, sitting by brimming pools. And she goes on and on and on through verse 16, just laying out everything that she loves about this man. This past week I was watching a YouTube video. It's a YouTuber. She's on like all the platforms, but she tends to talk about, she explains guy things to girls and she explains girl things to guys and tries to give some relationship advice. And in this one, she was talking about when she and her husband were, I don't know if they were still dating or if this was back in their early marriage, but they didn't have a whole lot of money. And so as a Valentine's gift, since she couldn't buy him something big and extravagant, she made a jar, and the jar was labeled 100 Reasons I Love You. And inside were 100 different strips of paper, 100 different notes that said things like, I love all the times that you brought me food at work when I was starving. I love that you love to hold my hand. I love you for taking the wheel when I'm too sleepy. That's what this woman is doing here. She's remembering all the reasons that she fell in love with him in the first place. All the things about him that drew them together. All the things that he did and all the things that he was, that she loved and that she cherished. She realized what she was doing. In her selfishness, she had this relationship that she treasured above all things, and she was willing to throw away her best friend because she didn't want to get her feet dirty. Because her feelings were hurt, because of her selfishness. Maybe you need to make a jar of 100 reasons why I love you. Because she said that in that video, these days, while she gave that jar to him, she uses it more than he does. Because when he leaves his dirty socks around the living room, when he does those things that frustrate her, she'll pull out that jar. And she'll read those notes, all the reasons why she loves him. All the reasons, all the things that he does, that she just loves about him. And all of the things that she loves begins to overshadow those frustrations and put it all back into perspective. And it all came because these daughters of Jerusalem spoke into their relationship. If you remember back in the very first week, we said that there are three main characters within this love song. There's obviously the man and there's the woman, but there's also these daughters of Jerusalem. And we said back in that very first week that it was important that as you are dating, as you are writing your love song, to seek wise counsel. And that same advice comes back again here. As you're seeking to resolve conflict, you still need to seek wise counsel. Because here, in these two chapters, these women, they speak into their relationship throughout the entire song, but here in these two chapters, they do it the most. Halfway through chapter 5, they begin to speak. And in chapter 6, verse 1, they speak into this relationship. At the end of chapter 16, during this time of conflict, they are the ones who speak rationality into this irrational conflict. They are the ones who write this woman, who help her to see what she is giving up because of her selfishness. And that leads to chapter 6. The woman speaks, saying, my lover has gone down to his garden, to the fragrant plantings, to graze in the gardens, to gather lilies. I belong to my lover, and my lover belongs to me, the one grazing among the lilies. These words in verse 3, they're significant, because this isn't the first time we've heard it. This is a phrase that is repeated over and over again. We read it in chapter 2. We read it in chapter 5. And we read it last week in chapter 7. What these words are a covenant language. They're like the wedding vows. for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, for richer, for poor, all of those things. This is covenant language where she is coming back to where she started. And she's renewing that marriage covenant. Saying, I am committed to my lover. I am committed to the one that I have given myself to. I am committed to my other half. Because that's what's at stake. When you choose to not resolve conflict, that is what is at stake. Nothing less than your marriage covenant is at stake when you refuse to reconcile. Because when you start driving that wedge in your relationship, it only gets wider and wider unless you are willing to come back to the table and to seek that reconciliation. I want to point out, last week, we were looking at this intimate encounter between this husband and wife of many years. We were reading through chapter 7, but I don't think it's a coincidence that chapter 7 comes directly after chapters 5 and 6. That closeness, that intimacy comes directly after this conflict and after that conflict has been resolved. They've said it's always best at those times. Intimacy is always best after a fight. And I think this is why. Because there's more to it than the physical. There's the emotional, there's the relational. And when you renew that, when you come from different sides and you come together as one, that fulfills all the parts of intimacy that we talked about last week. Resolving conflict in your marriage will result in a stronger relationship. Seeking the betterment of the other person and resolving that conflict will solidify your marriage and draw the husband and the wife together. And it will make a love that lasts forever. If you want a love that lasts forever, the first thing you're going to need is a strong commitment. Set me as a seal over your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is stronger than death. These days we do have a seal that's often associated with marriage. Many people, it's a gold band around their finger. It's a seal, it's a symbol to let everybody know, a reminder to both the person wearing it and to anybody else who's looking on. This is a sign, it is a symbol that I have given my heart to another. And apparently they don't come off sometimes. I would encourage you. I know there are reasons to take your wedding ring off. There are reasons to not wear it from time to time, but I would encourage you to put it back on. To carry around that sign, that symbol of that strong commitment that you have made to another person. Because it is an outward expression of a commitment that you have made, that you have pledged to someone that you love. If you want to make love last forever, then what you need is resilience in your relationship. She says, rushing waters can't quench love. Rivers can't wash it away. If someone gave all his estate in exchange for love, he would be laughed at to utter shame. Love that persists, that even though the trials may come, even though the floods and the rushing waters may come, it doesn't give way, it doesn't bend and break. I think James said it beautifully. In James chapter 1, my brothers and sisters, think of the various tests you encounter as occasions for joy. After all, you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, or steadfastness, or perseverance. The same is true in your relationships. As you go through the fire, as you go through all of these conflicts and you resolve them together and you stand firm and you are resilient. Persistence or perseverance being persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. When you hold to it, when you stay the course, when you give yourself to that relationship, your relationship will come out even stronger, just as your faith does. If you want to make a love that lasts forever, you need to have that strong commitment. You need to have that resilience, that perseverance in your relationship. But then you also need to have a whole lot of selflessness. The book ends with an analogy talking about how Solomon has these vineyards and he will let people use them. If they give him 1,000 silver, they can use the land for their own benefit. And the man uses this analogy and says, I have my own vineyard, and you don't have to pay me 1,000 silver. You don't have to give me anything for it because, my love, I am yours. All of me, all of my effort, everything that I have is yours. If you want to have a love that lasts forever, that needs to be the position that you come to your relationship with. That I am giving you all of myself. Nothing is being held back. There's no corners of things that we can't talk about. There's no areas of my life that are off limits to you because I'm an open book. All of me belongs to you. In closing, I want to say that there are 3 types of people in this world. There are the peacemakers, there are the peacekeepers, and then there are the troublemakers. We know we don't want to be that third one. But what often happens is relationships will either contain 1 or 2 peacekeepers. And that sounds really good, to be a peacekeeper. But it has its problems. Whenever there are conflicts between 2 countries, the UN will send in peacekeepers. And their job is to prevent it from the situation from escalating. They're to keep the peace. A peacekeeper will seek to appease. They'll seek to sweep under the rug any problem so that it doesn't escalate into a big problem. A peacemaker, on the other hand, a peacemaker will weather the storm. They will bring up the issues so that they can be addressed. They will invite conflict so that there can be resolution. And when there are 2 peacekeepers in a relationship, what will happen is all the problems will be swept under the rug. They're just cute little foxes. They're not going to do any harm. We'll just ignore them and look away, but those cute little foxes are going to chew at the vine. And at best, they're going to prevent growth. At worst, they're going to kill the entire vineyard. Sweeping the problems under the rug, acting as a peacekeeper, isn't going to resolve your problems. It's just going to make them get bigger. But even when there's a peacemaker and a peacekeeper in the relationship, this can cause problems. Because it always falls on the peacemaker to resolve the conflict. The peacemaker is always trying to bring up issues, to address issues, while the peacekeeper is trying to sweep them under the rug. And eventually it comes to the point where the peacemaker says, why am I the one who always has to apologize? Why am I the one who always has to try to resolve these conflicts? Why am I the one who is always fighting for our relationship? Why aren't you fighting for me? We need to be peacekeepers. In fact, we have all been called to be, or peacemakers. We've all been called to be peacemakers. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Each and every one of us has been given the mission of reconciliation. To be peacemakers, to go through conflict, to weather those storms so that our faith, so that our relationships can be that much stronger. And if you want to have a love that lasts forever, we see those old couples who have been at it for 50 years and we think, man, that's so awesome. Do you want to know how they did it? They were peacemakers. They sought to resolve the conflict. Didn't always get it right, but all the while, they remembered their commitment, they persisted in their relationship, and they put selflessness at the forefront of their relationship. If you want to have a relationship that lasts forever, you need to be a peacemaker. Our God is a God of reconciliation that draws people to himself, and he's given us that same mission of reconciliation, of being a peacemaker, and that applies to all people. But it shines the brightest. It starts with those who are closest to us. It starts in our relationships. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this word that has come from you. We thank you for all that we can learn from this relationship that we see in this love song. And God, as we are seeking some to start those relationships, some to persist in those relationships, God, I pray that we would lean upon you and that we'd lean upon your word. And God, as those conflicts arise, may we set aside our own selfishness. May we seek the betterment of the other person. And God, may you shine brightly through our relationships, that you might be glorified, that we might be peacemakers. Go with us this week, God. And if there are things that we've been avoiding, if there are areas in our relationships that we just don't talk about, God, I pray that we would seek to reconcile, that we would seek to come together, that we might give ourselves fully to our husbands and wives, that we might be an open book, that our relationship would grow and that our intimacy would deepen. God, I pray that you be with every husband and wife here, every dating couple that's seeking to make things work. I pray that you would be at the center of their relationships, that you would draw them together and draw them closer to you. We pray this in the holy name of Jesus. Amen. God bless you guys. We love you, and we'll see you next week.